My wife and I just recently went out to Monroe, Louisiana to visit Duck Commander, or many of you might know as Duck Dynasty. We took the tour through their warehouse, which is great history on their family, and in the end, they gave us our own duck call to assemble ourselves. Now this is a very simple design, and I'd like to see if I can try and make one of these out of wood. Now, I'm not a duck hunter, but these right here remind me of the old kazoos that we had as a kid, and so I'd like to see if we can make one of these. That way you can either go duck hunting or you can just drive your family a little bit crazy. This duck call is very simple, so let's take it apart to see exactly what it's made up of. Now this first piece is what they call the barrel. This is the wedge, it kind of holds everything together inside. This is a reed, this is what vibrates and creates most of the sound. And this is what I was told is the tuning board. And you can design this and adjust the length of it to help change the sound along with the shape of the reed as well. So it's a really simple design. So let's see if we can make one. Now you could make one of these duck calls really fancy by pulling out a lathe and turning them. But I know most people don't have one of these, so let's see if we can make it a little more simple. So the next easiest way I believe to make one of these would be using some wooden dowels. You can buy a variety pack at a craft store, but I want to see if we can get this very similar to the same size as the original. Now if I measure this piece out here, it's about 5/8 of an inch. Not exactly, but pretty close. And I believe I have one here. Yep, that's 5/8 of an inch. So let's work with this and see if we can get it cut to about the same length. And this tuning board is about 3.5 inches long. With the dowel cut to size, we now need to drill out a hole down the center. Now I took a rough measurement and it's about 1/4 of an inch, so let's try and do that. Here's an additional tip. When you're drilling out this hole, if you're using a standard bit, be very, very careful because there's a high likelihood that you could split the wood with it. I'm going to use a brad point bit, which has little cutters on the sides, and it should be a cleaner cut and less likely to split it. The easiest way to drill out this dowel would probably be just a drill press, but I know many of you don't have a drill press, so I'm going to show you another way. This right here is just a homemade jig with a couple pieces of wood that is screwed down to some other pieces on the bottom. These are cut at 45-degree angles, facing toward each other so that the dowel will stay nice in place. Now I'm going to just clamp this down, and then I'm going to use a drill guide to set it on top and hopefully keep everything nice and straight. The hole came out really nice and hopefully straight, but we won't know until we cut into it. Looking at the original piece here, there's a flat spot that is cut almost halfway through and then kind of tapers off to almost a point. So we need to do the same on this piece here, which I've measured in about 1.25 inches. I'm going to use a saw to cut into it, and then either a knife or a chisel to remove that material. But if by chance you have a bandsaw, you can usually cut these out a lot straighter and a lot quicker. And as I was cutting into this, I realized my drill bit was a little bit off center, but that's okay. I'm going to work with this to see how it sounds. With the tuning board nearly complete, I now need to create a barrel that will allow it to slide inside. And to do that, I'm going to try and drill out this 1-inch dowel. So let's give that a shot. And I'm going to use a 5/8 inch Forstner bit to drill this out. Now let's see if it'll fit inside. It is a little snug, but it fits. Awesome. Now before we go any further, let's put the original reed and wedge on our newly built piece just to see if it'll even work. Putting the reed in place, you might be able to tell the bottom of it does not curve down nearly as much on a piece we built. So this may or may not work, but let's give it a shot. Let's put the wedge in place, and hopefully this will go together. It does. Awesome. Now when you blow in this, you blow in the barrel side, not the tuning board side. So let's give it a shot. Absolutely nothing. So I have a feeling part of my issue is this right here, the tip of it does not curve down nearly enough to get the air in there to make the reed vibrate. So let's work on that. Now that we got it sanded down, let's give it a try. There we go. I get a kick out of doing that every time. It's fun just to play with the family with the original one, so this is going to be a lot of fun too. At least it's working now, so let's take this apart and see if we can finish making the reed and the wedge. Wow, that's on there tight. There we go. Looking online, I discovered that most duck calls have a reed made out of 10 mil plastic. So I jumped on Amazon and I found a 10-pack of 10 mil plastic sheets for less than $10, so less than $1 a sheet. So let's give this a try. Using the original reed, I'm going to use it as a template for the next one and just trace and cut it out. The new one does feel a little bit softer than the original, so let's give it a try and make sure it works. Alright, let's give this a shot. Well, it works. It seems like it's a little more high pitch. I'm guessing that's because it's a little bit thinner. It vibrates a little bit easier to different resonance. So, I wonder if I double these up, if that would help at all. Let's give that a shot. I have two cut out now that are slightly different on the ends, but that's okay. Let's put them together and give that a shot. Let's do this. Definitely a deeper tone. I like that better. So I guess two of those pieces together is the way to go. And the final piece we need to build is the wedge. Now the wedge is just a piece of hard rubber. So we could make this possibly out of an old hose, maybe part of an old shoe, maybe even an old rubber hammer. As long as it's a piece of hard rubber that'll allow you to wedge in between the reeds and the housing to squish the reeds down so they don't move, and so it kind of holds everything together. Now, if by chance you don't have any hard rubber, there has to be another option, right? Of course. Back in the day, they sometimes used cork or even cedar. So let's give cedar a try and see if this will work. Taking a quick measurement of this rubber wedge, it is just under 1 3/4 inches, so I cut down a little cedar block to about the same size. Then I'm going to take the tuning board and the cedar wedge and place the wedge right there on the inner corner, making sure it fits snug right up against it, and then we're going to trace it out. Then we want to cut away as much material as possible, making sure to stay on the outside of our drawing. Just please be careful, cutting something this small can be very dangerous. Then I'm going to use a belt sander to help remove the rest of that waste material. You'll probably have to test fit this several times, but you want this to be as flush across the top as possible, or possibly even a little bit on the low side for the wedge, because once you stick those plastic pieces underneath, it will push it up just a little bit. And now for the moment of truth, let's assemble this to see if it'll work. Make sure you get the reeds in place, making sure they are all the way against this back edge. Get our wedge, place it on top. You may have to readjust the reeds once you have the wedge in place, because it likes to walk around. And then put the barrel, push everything nice and tight together, and let's give this a test. You ready? It works! That is so awesome! So now let's compare the professional one versus the homemade one. As you can tell, they sound different. And that's to be expected because one, they're made out of completely different materials, the reeds are a little bit different, the shape internally is a little bit different. Even though the length is pretty much the same, it's not exactly the same. So I did a little research and they said that depending on all those circumstances, they can sound completely different. That's okay. This is at least a good basis to start off of. If you're interested in making a duck call, it's a good way to start. Now, of course, to tune these, there's a whole different ball game and a whole different genre of people out there that are much better than I'll ever be at tuning these, so I'd suggest doing a search on YouTube to find exactly how to tune these to your liking. Now, overall, I'm super excited. This actually worked, and now I can go annoy my family a little bit more. Yeah.